Have you ever wondered about the name of a country? Names tell a story. The name United States of America tells a very special story about a big country. Let's break it down into its three parts. United. This word means joined together. It's like when you and your friends team up to play a game. The country is not just one big place but many smaller parts that decided to work together as one. These parts are called states. They are like big puzzle pieces that fit together to make a whole picture. Each state has its own government and its own rules, but they all agree to follow the bigger rules of the whole country. State's estate is a large area of land, a community that governs itself. Think of it like a very big neighborhood with its own leaders. Before the United States was a country, there were 13 separate colonies. A colony is a place ruled by another country far away. These 13 colonies decided they wanted to be free. They wanted to rule themselves. When they broke away from the country that ruled them, they called themselves States of America. This part tells us where the country is located. It is on a huge piece of land called the continent of America, but the continent is actually two big land masses, North America and South America. The United States is in North America. So when you put it all together, United States of America paints a clear picture. It means a group of states on the continent of America that have joined together as one single nation. The name is a promise. It's a promise that even though the states are different, they will stand together. They will be united. This idea was very important to the people who started the country. They believed that by working together, they could be stronger than they ever could be apart. The name is a reminder of how the country was born and what it hopes to be. The story of how America got its name is a tale of exploration, maps, and a little bit of a mistake. For a very long time, people in Europe, Asia, and Africa did not know that the continents of North and South America even existed. They thought the world was much smaller. Then, in 1492, an Italian explorer named Christopher Columbus sailed west from Spain. He was trying to find a new, faster way to get to Asia. When he landed on islands in the Caribbean Sea, he believed he had reached the Indies. The Indies are part of Asia. That's why he called the people he met Indians, a name that has stuck around for a long time. A few years after Columbus, another Italian explorer named Amerigo Vespucci sailed across the Atlantic Ocean. He also explored the coast of what we now call South America. Vespucci wrote letters about his journeys. In his letters he described a vast new land. He was one of the first people to suggest that this was not Asia. He called it a new world. Now this is where the mapmaker comes in. In 1507, a German mapmaker named Martin Waldseemüller was creating a new, updated map of the world. He had read the letters from Amerigo Vespucci. He was so impressed by Vespucci's idea of a new world that he decided to honor him. On his new map, he drew the new continent and wrote the name America across it. He used the Latin female version of Amerigo's first name. Waldseemüller's map was very popular. It was copied and sold all over Europe. Other map makers saw the name America on his map and started using it on their own maps. Soon, the name began to be used for the northern continent as well. Over time, everyone just started calling the two new continents North America and South America. So, a whole hemisphere got its name not from a king or a conqueror, but from a mapmaker's choice to honor an explorer. And that is how the United States of America ended up with the name America. All thanks to Amerigo Vespucci and a mapmaker who admired his work. Long before any ships from Europe crossed the vast Atlantic Ocean, the land we now call America was already home to many people. These were the first Americans, also known as Native Americans, or indigenous peoples. Their ancestors arrived thousands and thousands of years ago. Most scientists believe they traveled from Asia across a bridge of land that once connected Siberia and Alaska. This land bridge is now covered by the sea. Over many centuries, these first people spread out, moving south and east, exploring and settling across both North and South America. They were the original explorers of this land. These first peoples were not all the same. They formed hundreds of different groups, or nations, with their own unique cultures. Each nation had its own language, its own spiritual beliefs, and its own way of life. In the frozen lands of the North, people like the Inuit learned to hunt seals and build homes from ice. In the vast grassy plains, nations like the Lakota and Cheyenne were expert hunters who followed the great herds of bison. In the dry, hot Southwest, groups like the Pueblo peoples built amazing towns with homes made of clay bricks, often stacked high like apartment buildings. The lives of the indigenous peoples were deeply connected to the land. They saw the earth, the sky, the rivers, and the animals as relatives, not just resources to be used. They developed deep knowledge about the plants and animals around them. They knew which plants could be used for food, which could be used for medicine, and which could be used to make clothing or build homes. They farmed crops that are now famous all over the world, like corn, potatoes, tomatoes, and squash. For thousands of years, these hundreds of nations were the only people in America. The story of America truly begins with them. The year 1492 marks a huge turning point in the story of America. Christopher Columbus and his 3 small ships arrived in the Americas. His journey started a massive wave of change across Europe, Africa, and the Americas. After Columbus, other European countries sent explorers and soldiers across the ocean. Spain was one of the first and most powerful. Spanish conquistadors came in search of gold, came in search of glory, came to spread their religion. They conquered the powerful Aztec Empire and the Inca Empire. Other European countries soon joined the race to claim the New World. France sent explorers deep into the continent along the St. Lawrence River and Mississippi River for fur trade. England also sent ships and people. English settlers came for different reasons: gold and riches, land to farm, religious freedom. The arrival of Europeans had a huge and often terrible impact on indigenous peoples. Diseases like smallpox and measles spread rapidly, causing the deaths of millions. This was a catastrophe that wiped out entire communities. Guns and steel weapons gave Europeans a military advantage, leading to wars and forced removals for land. Europeans also brought horses, cows, pigs, and wheat. Horses in particular changed life on the Great Plains, hunters and warriors on horseback. In return, crops like corn, potatoes, and tomatoes traveled from the New World to the Old World. This exchange is called the Columbian Exchange. It forever changed the diet, economy, and population of the entire world. Over about 150 years, England established a string of 13 colonies along the Atlantic coast of North America. These colonies were very different from one another. In the north, in an area called New England, the colonies were founded by people seeking religious freedom like the Pilgrims in Massachusetts. The land was rocky, so farming was difficult. People there made a living by fishing, shipbuilding, and trading. In the middle colonies like Pennsylvania and New York, the land was more fertile. These colonies attracted people from many different European countries and religions, making them very diverse places with bustling towns. The southern colonies like Virginia and South Carolina had a warm climate and rich soil, which was perfect for growing cash crops. These were crops grown not to eat, but to sell for a lot of money. The most important cash crops were tobacco and cotton. To work the huge farms, called plantations, the colonists needed many laborers. At first they used indentured servants who were poor Europeans, who agreed to work for several years in exchange for their passage to America. But soon, the plantation owners turned to a much more brutal system. They began forcing people from Africa to come to America and work as slaves. For a long time, the 13 colonies were ruled by Great Britain. They had to obey British laws and pay British taxes. But as time went on, the colonists started to feel like they were not being treated fairly. They were angry about taxes imposed without their consent, with the famous slogan being, "No taxation without representation." They felt that the king and the government in faraway London did not understand their lives or care about their needs. The colonists began to think of themselves not just as British subjects, but as Americans with their own identity and their own destiny. This growing anger led to the American Revolution. In 1775, fighting broke out between colonial militias and British soldiers. On July 4, 1776, the leaders of the colonies signed a famous document called the Declaration of Independence. It announced to the world that the 13 colonies were now free and independent United States of America. After a long and difficult war, and with help from France, the Americans won. In 1787, the nation's leaders wrote the Constitution, a set of rules for the new government. This document created a system of government that has guided the country for over 200 years, establishing the United States as a new nation built on ideas of liberty and self-rule. After becoming an independent country, the United States continued to grow. The young nation expanded westward to the Pacific under the idea of manifest destiny. Native American nations were displaced from their ancestral lands. As the country grew, it needed more people to build cities, to farm the land, and to work in its new factories. This need, along with the promise of freedom and opportunity, pulled millions of people from all over the world to America's shores. These people, called immigrants, came in large groups, or waves, from different parts of the world at different times. In the mid-1800s, a huge wave came from northern and western Europe. From Ireland, millions fled a terrible potato famine. They were poor and hungry, and they took jobs building canals and railroads. From Germany, many came seeking political freedom or better economic opportunities. They often settled in the Midwest, where they started farms and created communities that preserved their German language and traditions. From Sweden and Norway, drawn by the promise of cheap farmland in Minnesota and the Dakotas. Towards the end of the 1800s and into the early 1900s, the source of immigration shifted. Italians, Poles, Russians, and Greeks arrived. Many came seeking jobs in the booming factories of America's big cities. Many Jewish people fled persecution and violence in Eastern Europe, hoping to find safety and religious tolerance in the United States. People also began arriving from Asia. Chinese immigrants came to California during the gold rush and helped build the Transcontinental Railroad. Japanese immigrants came to work on farms in Hawaii and the West Coast. These waves of immigration were not always easy. Newcomers often faced hardship and prejudice. They lived in crowded city neighborhoods and worked long hours for low pay. They were sometimes treated poorly because their languages, religions, and customs were different. Laws were even passed to limit immigration from certain countries, especially from Asia. The story of people coming to the United States did not stop in the early 1900s. After new immigration laws were passed in 1965, the doors opened wider to people from all over the globe. In recent decades, the largest groups of immigrants have come not from Europe, but from Latin America. Millions have arrived from Mexico, El Salvador, and other countries in Central and South America. At the same time, a great number have immigrated from Asian countries like China, India, the Philippines, Vietnam, and Korea, bringing skills, traditions, and energy. Today, the United States is more diverse than ever, with people whose roots trace back to every single corner of the world. This diversity makes the United States unique. You can see it, hear it, and taste it every day. Walk down a big city street and you might hear a dozen languages. Restaurants serve food from Ethiopia, Thailand, Poland, and Brazil in the same neighborhood. This mixing of cultures is often called a melting pot, where everyone blends together to become one. Other people prefer to call it a salad bowl or a mosaic, where each group keeps its own unique culture, like different ingredients that together make a delicious and interesting dish. The story of America is the story of its people. It begins with the hundreds of indigenous nations who first called this land home. It continues with the arrival of Europeans and the forced migration of Africans. And it grows with every wave of immigrants who have come seeking a new beginning. The country is still wrestling with its complicated history and the challenges of bringing so many different people together. But the promise of the United States remains the same. The idea that people from different backgrounds can join together to form a single, strong, and diverse nation. The American story is still being written by all the people who call it home.